guess who I have on the show today? I'm really excited to have this conversation with this guy. I've got Justin Aldridge on the show. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm really, really excited to be here. I got to match that energy you just brought.
Yes, bring it. This is what I say. Like, we're on the show, we're having good, productive conversations. We got to just bring the energy.
Exactly. 100% right.
So, Justin, I'd love to start off with people's why. And you're a life and you're a success coach. As an entrepreneur, what's your why for what you're doing right now?
For me, Candace, that's a great, great question. And it's something that I've always been very intimately connected with. I know that people go through life and not everybody has that, I guess, that innate sense of calling in their life. Although I do believe that we all have it. Some of us are just more intimately connected to that. And I've always been very intimately connected with my own mortality. But really, as somebody who struggled with anxiety and depression growing up, after growing up through poverty and just really having a lot of stories that I bought into about myself and what my life was supposed to play out like, it wasn't until I went through depression in my mid-20s, almost lost my life, almost lost my marriage, and then having kids. When I had my daughter, that was really when things transformed for me. And I tell people there were really two, life-changing experiences for me. One was, 2012-ish, sitting in a hospital parking lot, and I'm holding in my hands the results of an MRI that's supposed to let me know if I have any brain tumors or MS. And I remember I'm just sitting there in the car and I'm just praying to God, hoping that the results are negative. And this is coming after 6 months of being tested for everything under the sun. And I'm just bawling my eyes out, just praying for a second chance and opening that piece of paper up and seeing that all the tests came back negative. And that was the moment that started me down this journey of personal development, because I knew that I had created all these physical manifestations that I'd been dealing with because I wasn't controlling my stress and my anxiety. So that started me down that road. And then what started me down the path of entrepreneurship specifically was a few months after my daughter was born. You know how this goes. You've got kids. And so my wife and I were doing the whole tag team thing. She was feeding the baby and then I was putting the baby back to sleep. And we're sitting there and it's the middle of the night. And I'm just having this wonderful moment with my daughter. And I'm looking down at her as I'm rocking her back to sleep. And I'm just trying to play out her entire life in my head. I'm looking at her like, what's she going to look like when she grows up? Like, what's her personality going to be? Who's she going to marry? What is she going to do with her life? And I just remember having this overwhelming sense of excitement about having a conversation with her about chasing her dreams. But then as quickly as that excitement came, a sense of disgust replaced it. And the reason why was because it immediately hit me. I was like, Justin, you can't have that conversation with her because you're not doing that in your own life. And that just lit a fire under me to really say, you know what, come hell or high water, I don't ever want to have to tell my kids from a place of regret what it looks like, what I think it looks like from the mountaintops of your dreams. I want to be able to take them by the hand and show them what that looks like. And so for me, that's really the biggest thing. Obviously, I want to provide a great life for my wife. I want to be able to give her the opportunity to accomplish her dream, which is being a stay-at-home mom. I want to be able to impact millions of lives. I want to do a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, if I'm really dialing it down to like the nitty-gritty of what fires me up, it's looking at my two kids in the face and saying, and hopefully being able to say, you know what, Daddy gave it all that he had. I used my God-given gifts and talents to go out and to pursue what I feel like I'm put here to do.
Yes. All I can say is amen, amen, amen. Because I am sitting here listening to you, Justin, and, at the very core, I share your values. I share what you're after. And, to hear you talk about your children and with your daughter, right? How am I going to tell her and look for all these things that she could be doing, and I'm so restricted myself? I find it amazing how either when you're faced with fear, like you were, right, the MRI, faced with death, like, oh my gosh, give me a second chance, or you're trying to look forward to the future, how those two things can like shake you, and either you decide to take action or you don't. So was it your girls, not your girls, and I'm thinking about my girls, your daughter, was it her that really made you say, okay, yep, it's time for me to just get out there and do what I need to do, impact the world?
Yeah, that, like I said, that was really the catalytic moment, the turning point that pushed me toward entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship was something that was never on my radar. You know, I grew up with a scarcity mindset because we grew up so poor. We grew up struggling. We grew up not knowing like what food was going to be on the table, what roof was going to be over our head. I mean, we moved so much when we were kids, and it was just, I was filled with so much fear. And going back to the anxiety and depression that I was dealing with, the vast majority of that, I guess the underlying cause of it was this push pull that I had going on inside of me. It's like this emotional rub of having this great sense of calling, this purpose for my life to do something bigger, but settling for this false sense of security, bouncing from job to job, hoping that I would find that thing, knowing that I was never going to. And so it was just a vicious cycle, to where looking at my daughter and having that moment with her was really just that kick off the cliff that I needed to say, you know what, you've lived enough life, you've had enough experience to know that safety and security don't really exist. It can be gone like that. Right. And this is your time. This is the time to really step into this, to go out there, to give it everything that you've got, so that way you can be the best example that you could possibly be. You could show up in the best way that you can possibly show up for your kids.
So when you talk about having the scarcity, and then the stories, even earlier, the stories that you told yourself, I mean, stories are powerful. So how did you really break that story? Like, how did you break that for yourself?
I had to understand that. So just to kind of give, obviously you probably know this, Candace, but you know, whenever we're growing up, the way that our mind works is, for the first 7 years with that child's mind, we are really like a sponge. That's why people say that type of stuff. Whenever kids are growing up, they're soaking that up like a sponge. Whenever they're repeating people, well, not only do I guess the things that we're doing outwardly affect children, but the things that are going on inwardly are affecting them as well. They pick up on those things. And so I adopted all of these limiting beliefs, like money's hard to make, or this is what I come from, so this is what I'm meant to be. And for me, it was just really going into the fire and sitting with these stories and picking them apart and doing the investigation to understand, okay, there's all these people out there that have gone in opposition to what their, I guess, quote unquote story was supposed to be. If you go look at most highly successful people, they're not people who came from success. They're people who were running away from, who were rewriting that story that was written for them. And so I tell people all the time, the moment that your life changes is the moment that you realize that you hold the pen. The story that was written whenever you were younger was written by everybody else. All right. They were the ones that initially opened up the book of your life, and they started writing out the story based on their life, based on what they knew it to be. And it was from a place of protecting you. It was from a place of not wanting to see you hurt, not wanting to see you fail. But at some point, you've got to realize, I had the power to pick up that pen and start writing the story as I want it to be, even if it doesn't match up with the story that I've had for the first however many years of my life. I get to write it the way that I want it to be written. Sadly, though, most people never pick up that pen. They just leave it sitting there on the page, and they just keep turning to the next page and turning to the next page based on that storyline that was written for them as kids.
Oh, well, this is my story. Guess I'll just hold on to it. Oh my goodness, that's super powerful, Justin. You know, so when you think about your journey, you were able to break through, you pushed, you're on your entrepreneurial journey, which I'm sure it continues to grow every day. What have been some of your challenges along your journey?
So really, I guess a few conceptual type of things are: one, embracing fear, and two, being able to sit in discomfort and understanding that that's part of the process. You know, I love whenever Tony Robbins was talking about when he was young and early on in his entrepreneurial journey, and he kind of had this transformative experience to understand that the moment that something produced fear inside of him, and not like the life or death type of fear, but this is really uncomfortable, I don't think I want to do this type of fear, that was the exact moment that he knew that he needed to do the thing. And so many people, I call it moments of truth. so many people have those fears. They have those transformative moments right in front of them, but they turn around and run from it. The only way that you're ever going to build courage in the face of fear, because the fear is never going to go away, but the only way that you're going to build the courage is by continuously doing it. Courage and confidence are habits just like anything else. You have to build them. They're not just naturally inside of us. And like I said, really embracing that concept of becoming comfortable being uncomfortable. There's a reason why, if you go read any book on success, it talks about the fact that you have to get outside of your comfort zone. You know, entrepreneurship as a whole is very lonely at times. It's very uncomfortable. There's times when you're going to want to quit. And if you're somebody like me who didn't have entrepreneurs around them, you don't have people around you who necessarily support what it is that you're trying to do because they've always lived according to the status quo. If you don't have that sense of resolve to be uncomfortable, to embrace that discomfort, to sit in and still move forward, you're never going to be successful in this game. And so really those are two of the biggest things for me. And then also understanding that it's a process. It's a long game. If you get into this and you're just looking for some magic switch to just flip and then all of a sudden you're going to be successful, you're not cut out for entrepreneurship. You've got to be committed to the long term. You've got to be committed to the ups and the downs, the highs and the lows, the pain and the moments of breakthrough. You've got to be committed to it all.
Absolutely. You know, I was facilitating a session yesterday, and it was a small group discussion, and we were talking about resilience. And one of the people in my group talked about, I forgot how he phrased it, but it was something like, you know, if you do something that you love, you'll never quit. And I think it speaks to your point about entrepreneurship and the long game, right? If you can find something that allows you to stick to it, because you will need to stick to it. Doesn't mean you don't pivot and change and all that other stuff, but it takes some level of commitment to get towards the success, commitment and patience along the way. So I think you're spot on with what you're saying there.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, a lot of the work that I do as a life and success coach is helping my clients through life and career transition, because that's a huge part of our life. You know, research shows that your career accounts for 33% of your life. And I actually just wrote a blog about this yesterday. And it was talking about the fact that if you go into something that you hate every day, that's you basically committing 33% of your life to doing something that you don't enjoy. Yet we wonder why the attrition rate within companies, the turnover rate is so high. We wonder why people on average have so many careers within their career span. It's because people are going out and they're doing things from a place of expectation that others are expecting them to do certain things, or they're going out and doing things from a scarcity mindset. They're not truly pursuing their passion, their calling, and that's the reason why they're trying to seek out all the wrong things in all the wrong places, because they're not really getting clear on what they want. And it's absolutely true. You've got to be willing to step into doing something that you truly love if you're going to be able to stay in this game very long.
Absolutely. And expectation is killer, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Other people's expectations, death sentence. So talk to me, Justin, a little bit about, you know, just what it looks like when you're in the phase of balancing an entrepreneurship journey and, you know, perhaps dealing with a full-time job, a part-time job, whatever it is along the way. Because there's a lot of folks listening who haven't reached full-time yet. There's a lot of people who don't even want to be full-time, right? They just want to do it. But how do you balance those two things?
I think that really it comes down to communication, open and honest communication with yourself, as well as open and honest communication with the other stakeholders around you, whether that's a spouse, whether that's your children, whatever that may look like for you. You've got to be willing to have that open and honest communication with them, invite them into the process, but you've also got to be able to have that open and honest conversation with yourself to say, am I truly committed to doing this? Am I committed to the potential late nights or early mornings? Am I committed to giving up on being able to do some of the things in the short term so that I can have what I want in the long term. I tell people all the time that entrepreneurship really is, especially if you're somebody who is side hustling, you're somebody who has a full-time job, which the vast majority of people do. You've got to be willing to make this agreement of short-term sacrifice for long-term gain. That's the mindset that you have to have. And so there are a lot of things that people who are in stable careers, who have their 9-to-5s, who aren't looking to be an entrepreneur or build something else outside of that. There's a lot of luxuries that they have that you won't necessarily have if you want to be successful as an entrepreneur. You may not be able to go out with your friends, every single weekend, because you may not have the money to do it because you're pumping money into your business, or you may use that time to spend time with in your business. You may not have the luxury of taking that extra vacation. You may not have a lot of luxuries that are afforded to other people, but that's why it's so important that you're making sure that you're doing something that you're passionate about, because whenever it's something that you truly love, you don't see it as, oh, I'm giving up this thing. You see it as, I'm gaining this thing. And that's a completely different perspective to have.
Right. You see yourself running towards something. I can see that something, that vision in the distance.
Exactly. And another thing is, you've got to learn to become extremely self-disciplined when it comes to your time. The reality is we all have the same 24 hours in a day. And I am not an advocate of people running themselves into the ground to build their business. I would rather somebody go in with a longer term plan of building it out over 5 years than trying to build it out in 2 years and killing themselves physically in order to do that. So really having great time management and using time management techniques, you can go Google this stuff, but get just really strict on yourself about utilizing that time, so that way you're actually maximizing your ability to be able to work in your business and grow it.
Mm-hmm. And as soon as you say that, it makes me think, so I recently, as of March 13th was my last day in corporate America. And so I'm a full-time entrepreneur now. And I had a moment, thank you. I had a moment, I don't know, about a month ago, and it kind of comes and goes every now and then, where, working like crazy. And it's easy to do that, right? When you enjoy what you're doing and you've got the time and freedom to do it, right? But I had to stop and think, like, to your point that you just made, what was one of the things that I really desired in making this leap into entrepreneurship, right? It was the life of being able to interact with my children, being able to do this, being able to do that. But if we're not careful, to your point about time, if we're not disciplined, I don't care, full-time entrepreneur, side hustle, or whatever, you will miss that. You will miss what you need and what you're after.
Absolutely.
Right? What you're chasing. So yeah, I 1,000% agree. Had those moments myself.
Yeah, and just like with everything else, I mean, there's going to be those seasons of hustle where you're going to put in the extra hour. You're going to do those things where you've really got to grind to get through whatever it is that's going on, whether it's a launch in your business, whether you're scaling the business, whatever that may be. But that can't be your norm. That can't be the go-to, like, oh, well, I'm going to put in 15 hours every single day in my business, because if I do that, then that's going to allow me to produce at the level of my 8-hour career that I have. The effects that that's going to have on not only your physical health, but also the spillover effect into your relationships, into your mental and emotional, stability. It's going to affect everything. So I am not an advocate for that at all.
Yeah, I'm 1,000% with you. Believer. So Justin, talk to me, being a life and success coach. Now, I think things have changed over the years, so that I think people really recognize when they hear the words life coach, like it has become like okay, yep, I get it. But for those that are listening, that are just kind of like, so what's this life coach thing really? Like, what is it all about? How do you explain that?
So I use the analogy, like when I go to networking events and things like that, and people obviously always ask the question, like, oh, what do you do? I tell people right off the bat, I'm like, I'm a bridge builder. And they're kind of like, you're a bridge builder? And I'm like, yeah, I'm a bridge builder. And they're like, what? And I can see the wheels turning, because obviously a lot of the things that I go to are like entrepreneurship type events. And they're like, how are you an entrepreneur as a bridge business? So anyways, I tell them, I'm like, no, actually I'm a life coach, but in reality, I am like a bridge builder, because the way that our lives work, people who are seeking out coaching, the reason why is because they're at a certain point right now and they have a desire to get to this other point. And my job is to help them build the bridge that's going to get them there, and then also walk alongside them to go across that bridge, because that bridge is untested, it's unproven, it's over scary waters for them. And so it's my job to really go through helping them to design the bridge, helping them to build the bridge, and then helping them to walk along the bridge to get to that other point.
I love that. I love that. I just keep picturing in my head when you said that, like somebody thinking, is he an engineer? Like, is he in the wrong room? Is he in the construction business? But I love that. I think, life coaching, while new for some people, but again, I think it's been around enough that people have started to sort of soak in and get it. Like, that's such an important bridge to build. I'll put it that way, right? As there are just so many people who are, have not yet, I'll say, really tapped into their God-given talents and abilities. To your point where you're trying to tell your daughter and imagine for your daughter all these great things, but you haven't started, at that point, hadn't started using your own abilities. There's so many people that are still stuck there. So, if there's somebody that's listening right now that is just kind of like, I'm stuck. I know I'm stuck. Like, what do you say to that person that wants to make a change, but just feels stuck?
The first thing that I'll say, because I've lived this, because I used to use that exact same terminology, I'm stuck. But I don't believe anybody can ever be stuck. I believe what people are doing is they're actually denying their truth. When they say they're stuck, they're denying that inner whisper. They're denying, we're both people of faith. They're denying spirit talking inside of them saying, this is not what I created you for. I created you to be, do, and have more than this. This is why you're so pissed off when you wake up in the morning and you got to go to that job that you hate. This is why you lay down every single night and you're like, I really don't want to do this for the rest of my life. Those aren't things that are unique to you. That is something that is put inside of you. That is your internal GPS telling you, you've got to get out of your own way and start going down the path that you were created for. As a coach, my job is to go in and do a lot of the things that we've just described. It's to really to excavate, what are those stories that are on top of your purpose, your calling, whatever you want to call it. What are those stories that are holding you back? And then helping you get crystal clear on, okay, this is where you are. Where do you want to go? Because the reality is, one of the first questions that I ask potential clients is, how will you know when you're successful? And if you ask people that are listening to this, ask people that question. I dare you. Because what you're gonna find is that most people can't answer that question because they've never put in the thought, the actual time, the energy, the effort to do that. We have this preconception of what success is, and most of the time, again, just like those stories, it's something that was handed down to us. And 95% of people, their definition of success is a dollar amount. It's not a feeling. It's not freedom. It's not the things that you and I have done the work to actually describe what success means to us. It's a dollar amount. Well, I don't care how much money you make. If you haven't thought out what success means in terms of your lifestyle, in terms of what you want to feel, in terms of your schedule, in terms of, yes, the material things that you want to have, but that's one piece of it. If you haven't done the work to figure that out, you're never going to get there. The way that I like to describe it when I'm speaking is, that's like going and getting in the car and saying, I want to go there. And somebody looking at you like, okay, where? And you're like, I don't know, man, there. But then you're pissed off when you never get there. Well, if you don't know where there is, how are you ever going to know if you're truly there? And so it's really helping people to get crystal clear to do those things. And then, like I said, from there, that's when the fear kicks in. That's when people are they're over uncharted waters. They're doing things that are really uncomfortable. They're doing things that they haven't ever considered doing, things that their spouse may not agree with, things that their entire family or social system around them, their ecosystem, really they can't necessarily get on board with or get behind. It may push them financially to make some sacrifices. Things start to get really rocky inside of their minds. And then that's my time to walk alongside them, to be that support system, to help them understand the stories that we rewrote, to help them understand what the bigger vision is. And so it's this huge process. But at the end of the day, it really boils down to getting clear on what it is that you want, formalizing a plan to get it, and then taking action on it. At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to.
Gosh, I love this, Justin.
I get fired up.
No, and I'm right there with you. Like, I'm trying to contain myself. I am right there with you. You know, I was was it yesterday? Yeah, it was yesterday. My coach, my business coach, he had sent me a text, just kind of like, hey, how are things going? And the question that he asked me was, how are you doing towards your dream life? Right? And it speaks to the same thing that you're saying, right? This guy, multi-millions, same thing. Not how much money did you make, right? What's your revenue looking like? No. How are you doing towards that dream life that you wanted, right? That we talked about spelling out. And it's the same thing that you're saying, right? It's not the dollar amount. It's the, what do you want? And we see people every day with millions and millions and millions of dollars who are killing themselves.
Yes.
Drugging themselves because the money isn't enough. The fulfillment is not in the money, right? What do you want life to look like? What's the impact that you want to make? And so I'm with you 1,000%. Like we have to shift our focus from an entrepreneurial standpoint to be about impact to get to fulfillment, as opposed to monetary gain to get towards fulfillment. So I'm right there. Now you've got me fired up, Justin. This is
See, that's why I like doing these things. But I cannot agree with you more. And that's one of the things I talk to a lot of people about is, yes, I think that everybody needs to be clear on their number. They need to know, what number do you want to get to? And you really need to think and consider the, I guess the lifestyle effect of that number. You say that you want multi-millions or that you'd love to be a billionaire, but go look at their lives. Look at the way it impacts their relationships. Look at their health. Do you see a whole lot of healthy looking billionaires? No. Do you see a lot of billionaires or multi-millionaires who have wonderful, abundant relationships with their spouse or with their children? Yeah, there's probably a lot of them out there, but you don't hear about them because they're not the ones who are out there flaunting their money. And so you've got to really put thought into, what is that number going to be? But I love what you just said, and that's something I just harp on constantly. There are just as many depressed rich people as there are depressed poor people. Money is not going to be the thing that is going to bridge that gap. That's why you've got to fill in the rest of the picture of, what does success, what does your dream like really look like? What does it feel like? And it's got to be based, it's got to, the foundation of it has to be your values and your true desires in life.
Absolutely. And I don't want anybody to take from our conversation, like, and this is not a, oh, I shouldn't chase millions, I should chase this. What it is right? It's a recognizing first what you want that life to be, right? Just recognizing that first. Doesn't mean you don't make millions and go after millions. Absolutely. Go and do it, but know what you want that life to be so that you don't miss what you really wanted in that whole process and are just unhappy with those millions, right?
100%. And that's why I say it's got to be based on your values for your life, not everybody else's. Because one of the things that I think is, we live in this society where people are afraid to raise their hand nowadays to say, actually, I do value money. Like, money is important to me. Being a multimillionaire is important to me. People are afraid to do that because they feel like that's a knock on their character somehow. And I'm like, no, screw that. Like, if that's what you value, raise your hand and own that thing. But that can't be the only part of the picture. You've got to make sure that you fill in the rest of the picture, but don't be ashamed of that part of the picture, because it's huge.
Right. Absolutely. Just be all out in it. I love it. I love it. So right now, Justin, if people who are listening or watching are like, man, how do I get in contact with this dude? Where did they find you?
The best places to find me are really on Instagram or Facebook. On Instagram, you can find me. I'm Justin S. Aldridge. On Facebook, if you just search Justin Aldridge, I'm up there at the top of the list. And then they can go to my website, justinaldridge.me. They can go on there, check out my free resources, check out my blog, my coaching page, all that good stuff.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to make sure that all of Justin's information is in the show notes at CandaceSpears.com. So you can feel free to go there and grab it if you missed it right now. But Justin, this has been a great conversation. Like a great conversation. I'm so happy that you could take the time to join. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
So everyone, you know what I say, do not just take what you have heard and hold on to it. Because this is too good to hold on to. I'm telling you that right now. But take it and take some action. So I hope you have a great day, a great evening, whenever you're listening. And I'll talk to you again or watching. And I'll talk to you again very, very soon.